forced back behind him, and he wiggled through, pushing with his knees and hips and fingers. And as he was going further in this passage, he realized it was getting tighter and tighter. And he then saw a bend where the passage went downward, and thought that it would widen out. So he managed to get through a very tight passage by blowing out the air out of his lungs to manage to get through. But just after that, he realized that it was a dead end and that he was stuck. He couldn't push himself back up, and there was no space at all to carry on or to turn around. He called his brother Josh for help, and when he came, he tried to pull John out, but couldn't manage. He tried coming out of the tunnel and going back in with his feet first, and try and grab John's ankles with his feet, but that didn't work. All you could see of John was just his feet sticking out of this hole. They decided they would have to call for help, so Josh went back out, and it took about an hour for the first rescue volunteer to arrive. Her name was Susie, and she was quite small, so she was able to go down there without too much difficulty. The problem is that the place where John was stuck was at an angle of about 70 degrees. He was almost head down. She put a rope round his legs and tried pulling, but that didn't work, and she realized she was going to need a lot more help. Outside, there were 100 people there who came to rescue. When she explained the situation, they realized that John was stuck in an angle where they wouldn't manage to pull him out without breaking his legs, and due to his condition, the shock would have killed him. They tried thinking of different solutions. They even thought of ordering gallons of oil to make him slip out of there, but realized that wasn't going to work. So they decided to build a pulley system. So they started drilling into the rock to put the anchors in. And during that time, there was a rescuer that went down there to stay with John and talk to him. And John was getting very, very uncomfortable with his body upside down. All his body fluids were going down to his lungs and his head, and he had difficulty breathing. An expert outside said he would probably rescuer kept talking to him, and they prayed together, and John told him about his wife, Emily, and his 1-year-old daughter, Lizzie. They were also expecting a second child. John was stuck in a crack that was 8.5 inches wide. They were going to have to pull really hard. The rescuer next to him managed to give him some drink, and John was having some moments where he was calm and other moments where he would go into total panic and start thrashing his legs helplessly. They were able to bring down a radio on a cable line transmission, and John was able to talk to his wife, who told him to keep fighting, and he was crying on the radio, and they were saying how much they loved each other. The police system was finished on November the 25th at 4 p.m. And by that time, John had been stuck upside down for 19 hours. There were about 15 tandem pulleys drilled into the wall of the cave, with a rope going through it, and just above the crack there was a natural arch. So they were ready to start pulling, and they told John that he would have to help as much as he can and push with his hands to push his body up. And they all started pulling. There were 8 men pulling at the same time. John was getting out of there. He was moving